So with these 10 finger picking patterns, guys, you will be able to play most finger picking songs. These are patterns that you can find in pop music, in country, and even in jazz and R&B. Now, this lesson is aimed to beginners and intermediate. Take it slowly, particularly if you've never played finger picking before. You may take a little bit to learn some of these patterns, and potentially you have a few weeks or even months of work condensed within this video. We'll cover various techniques, starting with arpeggios, which is when we play single notes, getting into plucking, percussions, Travis picking, and even the flick percussion where you slap and strum at the same time. The tab for all of these patterns is available as PDF and Guitar Pro format on my Patreon page. You guys will find the link in the description below. Now, playing finger style, it means that on your picking hand, you will be playing with your thumb, index, middle, and ring finger. We won't be using the pinky. However, sometimes you may find techniques that only involve thumb and index, or just thumb, index, and middle finger. So it's either 2, 3, or 4 fingers involved on your picking hand. As a general reference, think about the thumb as the note that you play in the bass, which is typically on the lowest 3 strings, and think about the other 3 fingers available, index, middle, and ring, either on the D, G, and B, or on the G, B, and E strings. And now, without further ado, let's get into the first pattern, which is going to be an easy finger picking pattern involving single note arpeggios. We'll be doing this. We'll be positioning the thumb on the note C, then B, A, and G, and you'll be playing on the top part, on the upper part of the chords involved, the notes G, D, E. Okay, so these 3 notes will stay the same, and we only change the note in the bass. You can think of this as a C at 9, which moves into a G over B, G6 over B, and then an A, 7 sus4, and then another G or G6. Now, nice and slow, we'll be playing this. So you'll start with your thumb on the A string, and then index, middle, and ring. This time, in this pattern, you will find them on the highest 3 strings of the guitar, first, second, and third, and you'll go this way. Repeat the same strings and same fingers for the next chord, and for the next one as well. And for the G, all you guys have to do is keep these 3 fingers where they are and simply move the bass note, so the thumb, from the A to the E string, in order to play the note G in the bass. So again, all together, nice and slow, it goes this way. A little bit faster. Nice and simple to get started. Make sure that you keep this legato feel, i.e. that you don't stop any note, you keep them ringing while you play the other strings. Now, if you guys are new here, I just want to briefly introduce myself. My name is Simone, I'm a musician and content creator based in London, UK. And on this channel, I try to bring you my very best guitar lessons. So if you guys are enjoying this lesson, you can show your support by simply subscribing to this channel and liking this lesson. We're trying to reach 75,000 subscribers here on YouTube, so your help will be much appreciated. Now, for the second pattern, we'll need these chord positions. C, then take this C position and move it 2 frets across in order to play a D add 9 or add 9/11 if you also include the first string. Then an E minor add 9, which you will only need to play, to position 2 fingers essentially to play it, and then a G, played with the G in the bass, and then 3 open strings. So to recap, first chord, second chord, then this. It's gonna be really easy coming from the D add 9, and then this for the G. Now, this pattern is slightly longer because you will have 6 sounds per chord, i.e. you play the thumb, which is going to be with the bass note, so starting on the C chord, that's going to be the note C on fret 3 of the A string. And then this time, the index, middle, and ring will be placed on the D, G, and B string, like so. You play all of these 4 notes one at a time, then you take a little break and you repeat only the middle finger on the G string and the index on the D string, creating this pattern. After that, you will move to your next chord and repeat the exact same strings. Then, as said, you will remove the note D. You will now have to play the note E in the bass, i.e. you move your thumb on the 6th string this time. You play the exact same strings as your E minor add 9 when you play your simple G major. If we go nice and slow all together, it becomes this chord progression. If we play this chord progression a little bit quicker, we get this. For most of these patterns, we'll be using simple chords like these. Now, a few tips that may help you with fingerpicking guitar. Make sure that you start with all of your fingers positioned on the strings before you start your pattern, like so, instead of starting, with all of the fingers jumping on the strings. Make sure that these 3 fingers are not flat, are not straight, they must be curved towards the inside of your palm, like this, okay? And then the other thing, make sure that you don't keep your hand too close to the strings. This may stop the sound and create an unnecessary palm muting. So what you want to do is have a little bit of space, a little bit of room between the wrist and the body of the guitar, like this. Now in this third pattern, we'll be introducing the plucking technique, which is when you literally pluck more than 1 string at a time. So we'll be starting plucking 2 notes per chord simultaneously. Now these 2 notes will be the lowest and the highest in the voicing that we'll be playing. So for a C chord, you'll be using your thumb on the A string, note C, and then your ring finger on the 2nd string on the B string, playing the note C again, this way, okay? After that, so you pluck these 2 together, and after that, all you do is play your middle finger on the G, index on the D, and then repeat the top note with your ring finger once more, creating this pattern. Okay, you repeat the same pattern for all of the other chords, obviously moving the thumb accordingly to the notes that will be positioning in the bass. Okay, now the chords needed are C, G, played this way, then D over F sharp, and E minor. So applying this finger picking pattern, we get this. So only the C starts on the A string. The other 3 chords that we play, G, D over F sharp, and E minor, they all have the bass note played by the thumb on the low E string. So if we go a little bit quicker now, it sounds like this. Now guys, before continuing with all of the other finger picking patterns, if you guys want to learn with me in a very structured way, going through different levels of finger picking acoustic guitar into an R&B and neo-soul style, there is my new course which is called Your First 5 Neo-Soul Chord Progressions. And in this course we go step by step into all of the techniques and chord positions and chord progressions needed to play R&B and neo-soul on acoustic guitar, covering, as I said, the 7th chords, the 9th, 11th, 13th, but also the timing and the music theory behind these chord progressions so that you really understand what you're playing and you can play it in any key and you can apply it to your own chord progressions as well. So if you want to learn more, don't miss it. The link is going to be in the description below. Now in this 4th pattern, we'll be introducing the Travis picking, a very popular country finger picking technique which consists in moving the thumb across two different strings between the bass note, which is typically the root, and another degree of the chord, which is typically the third or the fifth. While we do that, we'll be using only two more fingers, the index and the middle finger, so this time we won't be using the ring finger. Now, on the first chord, which is going to be C major again, we'll start plucking, like in the previous pattern, the lowest note and the highest note, so the A string with your thumb and the B string with your middle finger this time. Okay, you pluck them simultaneously. Then you play your thumb again on the D string, index on the G, so you do. Then thumb on the A again, middle finger which was on the B string, and then once more the thumb on the D string, creating this. Okay, so nice and slow again. Then we move to G, and all we need to do, as usual, is moving the thumb to the low E string and do the same pattern. Okay, so the thumb is alternating between the low E string and the D string this time. Then we move to an E minor, where we play the same strings as the G chord, but we'll stay on the E minor for two patterns, creating this. If we combine everything, nice and slow, it's gonna be this. Feel free to rest your finger on one of the strings or on the body of the guitar, or keep it floating, it's completely up to you. If we play this fourth pattern a little bit faster, it's gonna sound like this. Now, after practicing the Travis picking using three fingers, thumb, index and middle, we'll now be moving for our fifth pattern into the Travis picking only using two fingers, so a little bit more old school and bluesy, and we'll be alternating the thumb as well as the index between two different strings. So let's have a look at the first chord. The first chord is a C major. We'll be starting with the note C on the A string with your thumb, then the index plays the G string. Then you move your thumb to the D string because you alternate between the A and the D string, and you'll move your index to the B string, so even the index now is alternating between G and B strings, okay? Creating these four notes. Okay, you play that, you move to the next chord, which is going to be a G over B, and you play the exact same strings. Then you go to an A minor 7, continuing on the same strings. And lastly, you play an E minor, where you start now on the 6th string, note E, and then you play G, then D with your thumb, and again B string with your index, creating this. When you combine everything, you get this. If we play a little bit faster, we get. Now in this sixth pattern, we'll be introducing more groove, almost in an R&B way, but we'll keep the chords nice and simple. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna combine the plucking technique, where you play more strings simultaneously, particularly now we'll be starting with 4 strings played simultaneously, with single note arpeggios, which we already practiced, and percussions, which is when your right hand goes on top of the strings with the intent of stopping the sound of the chord and simultaneously create a percussive sound. Now, the pattern sounds like this. So what we do on the first chord, which is a C, you pluck the A, D, G and B strings simultaneously with thumb, index, middle and ring, like this. Then you use your right hand, all of your hand I mean, on top of the strings to stop the sound and create this percussion. Then you play thumb on its own, so a single note arpeggio, index on its own, single note arpeggio, and then you pluck middle and ring finger on the G and B strings together before hitting the second percussion. Keep in mind, guys, that these percussions will be on the beats 2 and 4, like the snare of the drum beat. Like so. And then we move to a G, which means you can keep these 3 fingers where they are and you only move the bass note to the low E string doing... You stay on the same strings and you play an E minor. And you stay on the same strings when you play the last chord, D over F sharp. Combining everything nice and slow, we get this. And now a little bit quicker. Now for the 7th pattern, we'll be using bar chords, almost giving a sort of jazzy R&B vibe to what we'll be playing, and we'll be doing so over a sort of turnaround in C major where we play these chords. D minus 7 first, then A minus 7, G7, and finally C major 7. So it's a 2 minor, 6 minor, 5-7 dominant and 1 major 7 in the key of C major. And what we do here, we apply a rhythm figuration which is called dotted 8 groove, which essentially means that all of the notes we'll be plucking will be 3/16 notes apart. And once more, we'll also find a percussion on the beat 2 and on the beat 4. It sounds like this. So you pluck all of your 4 strings. For example, on the D minus 7, they are A, D, G, and B together. After 3/16 notes, you pluck only index, middle, and ring, so there's no bass note anymore. Percussion. You pluck on the offbeat number 2 all of the 4 strings once more. You don't play anything on beat 3, and you've got a percussion on beat 4. Again, the tab is on my Patreon page. So if we apply this pattern to all of the chords, we get... If we go now a little bit faster, we get this. Now in this 8th finger-picking pattern, we'll be using simple chords and a simple 4-note arpeggio per chord. However, we'll be now introducing percussions plus ghost notes, which is when you hit a string with a deadened sound, which doesn't sound like the note, it sounds like a ghost note, so as a percussive sound after the actual percussion that we play. So this goes this way. Okay, so how do we do it? Let's take a C major, we play a 4-note arpeggio, thumb, index, middle, and ring on the A, D, G, and B. And then what we do next, we do a percussion, and after that we use the index on the G string, and then the thumb on the A, I would say, playing this. How do we get this sound? It's basically made by the left hand, by removing the pressure from the frets, okay? So we don't do this, otherwise we play 2 extra notes, 2 normal notes. What we do is this. Okay, so we remove the fingers and we somehow stop all of the strings, if you like, and we get that type of sound. Okay, now if you apply this to C, then G over B, then A minus 7, then E minor, we get this. And if we play this a little bit quicker, check this out. By now, you guys should be okay with me moving the thumb to the E string when I play a chord which has the bass note on the E string, okay? Now we'll be introducing a slightly more difficult percussive sound, percussive technique, which some people call a flick percussion. Now this consists in using only 2 fingers when you play, so a little bit more old school, using thumb and index only. But when you do the percussion is made by 2 parts. There is a slap with your thumb and there is a small strum with your index. In recent times, this technique has been made popular again by players like John Mayer in songs like Stop This Train. Okay, so what we're gonna do here, we're gonna start by plucking two strings at the same time, the lowest and the highest of a C major, so the A and the B string, like so. Then we'll be doing this flick, which consists in hitting the strings with your index as a small strum across a few strings. You decide which strings, there's no rules about that. And then your thumb will play a slap. So you'll need a sort of rotation where I usually say you have to load, you know, the move to get this, okay? Okay, so instead of doing just this, you do this. Now this is a technique that is really hard to see in slow motion. I'll try to slow it down just to show you that you effectively play two grace notes where the index touches the strings with the flick, with the strum, just before the slap of your thumb. So it doesn't go this way, it goes this way. The more you do it, the more natural this will feel. Allow yourself some time to learn it. Start slow, but also keep in mind that when you practice it slow, it's not gonna sound that good. This is a typical technique that sounds good when it's played relatively fast. So we pluck these two strings, we do the flick, okay? After the flick, we play the index on the G string, thumb on the A, index on the B, and we play the second flick, obviously on the beat 4. So super slow, it goes this way. Okay. Slightly faster. And if we apply this to the chord progression, C, G over B, A minor 7, and E minor, like for the previous pattern, we get this. As usual, I've moved the lowest note to the E string when I played the E minor chord. So let's listen now to the same technique, same chord progression, slightly faster. Now obviously guys, allow yourself some time to learn this technique. This is a really advanced technique, so we are getting into something more complicated with these last two finger picking patterns. Now for the last finger picking pattern that I want to talk about in this lesson, we'll get into something more jazzy, R&B, closer to what we usually play on this channel. And we'll be mixing together different techniques, the 4-note arpeggios, so single note arpeggios, the plucking technique and the percussions. Like I said, in a more jazzy or R&B groove. The chords that we need are slightly more difficult this time. There will be a C major 7 played this way. Then a B7 sharp 5, an E minor 9, and an A13. Now, if you've never played any of these chords before, there's plenty of lessons on this channel where you can learn all of these positions. And remember that when you download the tab on my Patreon page, you will also find the chord diagrams on top of each bar. Now, the groove goes this way. So for the C major 7, we'll be playing the strings 6, 4, 3, and 2 with thumb, index, middle, and ring as a 4-note arpeggio, followed by a percussion, and on the offbeat number 2 you move to the next chord, B7 sharp 5, and you play the same strings but plucking them all together, okay? Then you move to the E minor 9, so the thumb now is on the A string, so you play the A, D, G, and B, and again you play a 4-note arpeggio, followed by a percussion, and on the offbeat number 2 you'll be playing the A13 all together, plucking it all together, and then percussion on 4 as usual. Now between these two chords the pinky doesn't move, it stays on the same note, which is the same top note. So you get this. And if we go a touch faster we get this. Right guys, so these are the 10 essential finger picking patterns to play most finger picking songs. I hope that you've enjoyed this lesson. As usual, let me know in the comments below your favorite finger picking pattern, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to reply. If you want to learn more, check out the tab on my Patreon page. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next lesson.